Welcome back to Villanova Sports Talk here on this Monday afternoon. Glad you could join us, Nova Nation. David Szczepanski alongside Stephen Cain. We have a very special guest in studio, Villanova quarterback Pat McQuaide. Pat, playoff season is here, getting ready to take on Harvard this Saturday. But first of all, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It's a cool honor to be. I've listened to the show, and you guys do awesome stuff. So it's cool to be in the studio and get to hang out with you guys for a little bit.
Appreciate that, Pat. Thank you very much. We'll just get started here. Very general. You've been very clear in your post-game press conferences and just in general about your love for Villanova. Only been here for a few months. I know we had the opportunity to talk a little bit off air at the homecoming pep rally, and you just echoed that same sentiment. What is it about Villanova that makes it so special? And what has these first, can't even say year, but kind of few months, 4 or 5 months been like for you?
Yeah, honestly, looking back, every school I've been to, has great facilities and has, nice stuff. But, I think the thing that separates Villanova is just the people. From the beginning back in December last year, the first conversations that I had with Coach Bowden and Coach Ferrante of, you could tell that, this place is special and this place is a little bit different. And then, like, kind of what I've talked to you about in the past, when I got here in January, of guys just really bringing me in and treating me like they'd known me, for 4 years and allowing me to be myself, but also, work in with the standard and, the line that is upheld here at Villanova. And, I think just the people that we have, our coaching staff, my teammates, our support staff, our athletic training staff, all the people that go into us, and there's many more that I didn't name, but people give everything that they have, and it's not just the guys on the field. And I think that's why we are successful, and that's why, that V means so much, and that's why this place is as special as it is.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And this is a good segue into the next question. Pat, it's no secret you've had a very successful season, top 35 in the FCS in terms of passing yards, over 2,300, almost 20 passing touchdowns on the season. I'm just curious, or both of us are, I should say, what are your kind of general takeaways of how this regular season has gone, right? Started out, with a 1-2 start, but they've really come on late with 8 straight wins. What are your kind of general assessment of things in terms of your play in the offense?
Yeah, I think the first game, we were really supposed to play a game week 1, and then, that kind of got taken away from us. And then, to play Colgate, what was week 2 for everybody else. And I think we did a good job of playing a team that had already played a game. And, that can be rough, when you haven't played, and especially when you have some new guys. I think everybody came into the season, with kind of a question mark at quarterback. Nobody had really ever seen me play. And same thing, with like the other guys we have that are new. We have a couple guys on defense that are new, and some young guys, and then like guys on offense, Luke Colella, some new guys that were playing. And I think everybody just kind of wanted to see what it would look like. And you run into 2 pretty good teams at the beginning with Penn State and Monmouth. And I think that the thing that I'm most proud of with the season is that there was a point in time after we lost to Monmouth where everybody was kind of looking around and being like, Villanova is never 1-2. That's not how it works around here, especially since Coach Ferrante has been the head coach. And I think everybody kind of was looking around, and I think we have some really strong leadership, from the guys that are older, and we have some young guys, like I had mentioned earlier, that they had to grow up, and I think that they really did, from that moment of losing to Monmouth, and being in that locker room after that game and saying, you know what, we didn't play great, and Monmouth is a good team, but we're not going to let this happen again. And I think we did a really good job of just coming in every week and not getting complacent. And I think our staff has done a phenomenal job of not letting guys fall into that, like we're Villanova, we're just going to show up and win. And I think, we've done a good job. And fortunately, we've stayed healthy. And guys have done a really good job, in the times that everybody doesn't see. It's great to play well on Saturday and do good things. But, our guys practice really hard. They lift really hard. They watch film. It's just good to see, as an older guy that has seen the way it's supposed to be done, to see younger guys and newer guys step up and fill in those roles. It's been really great.
Pat, I want to follow up on something that you mentioned, just specifically kind of coming into the season in that quarterback battle, if you will, with Tanner Maddox for the starting spot. Mm-hmm. Just what was that like for you coming into a program where, no one had known you really, didn't know a whole lot about you. But also, I'm not sure if you were in a similar situation with Nicholls State at the beginning of your career there, but just in general, what was that experience like for you of, not only just trying to compete for the spot to be the starting quarterback, but also just try to fit in with this team?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think that anytime you go somewhere new, whether you go to a great place or you go to a place that's not as great, it's always a challenge, to come in, to get acclimated, and to rebuild those relationships and to build new relationships, and I think that, at the beginning, when you go somewhere, it's almost just kind of like let me kind of figure out the lay of the land and, look and see. And, that just goes back to, like I said before, about, the guys that we have on our team, them allowing me to be me, I think has the reason that I've had some success this year. And, being on a quarterback competition, I think was great. I think it was great for myself, and I think it was also great for Tanner. And, Tanner and I are very close, and we've been very close since the moment that I got here. And competing every day against each other has made both of us better, not only on the field, but I think off the field as well. And that shows a lot. It's a testament to him and what kind of human being he is, of that we did compete, and the relationship off the field never changed, and he helps me more, just as much if not more than anyone else, during the games and during the week and watching film together. And he's kind of like my eyes on the sideline, for stuff that I don't see, and we talk after every series. And that goes with the rest of the quarterbacks. I think we have a really close group along with Coach Bowden, and that's a testament to him and the room that he's built and the guys that he's brought in. So yeah, I think just being able to fit into that, I think I fit in pretty early. We're all pretty similar. We like to have a good time in there, so I think it was a good fit from the beginning.
I didn't know that you guys like to have a good time. The swag surfing videos, yeah. I don't think we're very clear for that. A few weeks ago, Pat, you had talked about your close relationship with Luke Coella, Lucas Kopecki, and a bunch of the other receivers, kind of living with each other in a way. In all 11 games, at least 6 receivers have made a catch in each of those 11 games. How important is it for you to get everyone involved in the offense, but also to develop a relationship, especially with the guys at the top in terms of receptions, Coella and Kopecki?
Yeah, I think we have really, really good players, and I think, we have a strong group of older guys, and I think we have a strong group of young guys too, especially in the receiver room. You have Luke and Lucas that are kind of the old heads of the room, and then you have the younger guys. Braden Reed is a freshman, Colby's a sophomore, Banks a sophomore, Raleigh is another young guy. So I think that those guys do a good job of, the 2 older guys do a good job of showing the young guys what it's supposed to be like, and I think the young guys do a good job of saying that I don't really care that you're older, I want to play too, and it's constant competition in that room, but I think they all do a really good job. And I think last week was a phenomenal example of when other teams play us, they have to decide what they want to take away. So if you want to put guys in the box and stop the run, and you want to, double Coella and you want to double Kopecki, well, we have other guys that can play. Chris Colby was a phenomenal example who, had a really good start to the season, and I think kind of, tapered off a little bit, and not to his fault at all. It's just kind of how the chips fell. And then last week, I think their emphasis, Sacred Hearts, was to take away Coella. Well, then he has 5 catches for 100 or 6 catches for 120 yards, and gets over 100 for the first time in his career. So, I think it's just, it's a testament to those guys and the way that they work, and just saying every week of, it almost seems like, Coella and Kopecki, they're consistent threats, but there's always another guy that shows up every single week and makes big-time plays. And, I've talked to those guys before, and it's everybody wants to have 100 yards, and everybody wants to score 3 touchdowns, but the reality of it is that's not how it is, and you may not have 5 catches for 120 yards, right? You may have 1 catch, but it could come on a 3rd down in the 4th quarter where we need you to win on a route, and we need you to make a big-time catch, and that's what those guys have done all year long. And, they're a phenomenal group to play with. They're a phenomenal group to be around, in terms of the competition that they bring. And they always have an edge about them. And I think that they make our team better in terms of always having that energy and competing. And even the guys that don't play, the receiver group brings more energy to practice and to games. If you come out and watch our practice, the celebrations during practice, when we execute plays from our receivers.
Don't worry, I'm going to get to that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So those guys are phenomenal.
Yeah, and Pat, speaking of deep positional unit rooms, let's shift the focus to the running back room. David Abbott, Isaiah Ragland, just kind of curious your thoughts on what those guys do in terms of opening things up for you guys in the passing game.
Yeah, those guys, the 3 of those guys are unbelievable. I tell people all the time that, I hand the ball off to them and I stand back there and watch, and I get the best view of watching them do what they do, because I can't do any of that stuff in terms of running the football, as we've seen, through 11 games, but I get a front row seat to watch those guys cut and watch their vision and run people over and run away from people, and it's incredible, and obviously, those three are incredible players, but you can't do anything without the big boys up front. And like you talked about deep, I mean, I think, we have 7, 8, 9 offensive linemen that can really go and can really play. And even, you lose Jake Picard early in the year, middle of the year, who's a phenomenal player. And, you put Quinn Whalen in, who has played in games, obviously hasn't played as much as Jake, but it kind of just picked up right where it left off. Quinn went in, never skipped a beat. But yeah, to get back to the running backs, those guys are unbelievable. And especially, the Towson game is what you think of. I think, David was banged up and goes down, and then Isaiah, goes down, and then everybody's like, well, you're down to your third running back. Well, then he breaks Brian Westbrook's rushing record. And it's, we don't really see it as 1, 2, and 3. We see it as 1A, 1B, and 1C. It's like, what do you want to take away? If you want a guy that can run around you, we'll put Jabril in there. If you want guys that can run through you, we'll put Isaiah and David in there. And, those guys have done a phenomenal job all year. And the best thing about it, same with the receiver room, is that it's not about the stats. It's about winning. And those guys do whatever it takes to win. And those guys are phenomenal blockers. And I think that's something that gets taken away because of how good they are with the ball in their hand, is that when you watch Jabril Mace block and when you watch Ragland and David block, it's as impressive as it gets, keeping me safe back there. So, I appreciate those guys a lot for that.
Yeah, I know, Pat, you weren't here last year, but Coach Bowden designed a play, let's just say a couple plays perhaps, for Brendan Bell to become the first ever Villanova player to score both an offensive and defensive touchdown in the same game. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious, what is it like to work with Coach Bowden? And also, if you can, just kind of walk us through the weekly preparation for you specifically.
Yeah, working with Coach Bowden has been amazing. It's incredible to work with a guy who's played at Villanova because he gets it. The people, I think, when you go somewhere and as a job to work and to coach, it means a lot to you. But, Coach Bowden lived this. He was the guy here. He was an All-American here. Like, he went to the playoffs. So I think it adds another layer of, what this place means and what that V means. And it's amazing to get to work with him. He continuously, every week, puts me in situations he prepares me for situations, and then gets me in them so that way I can succeed and that way we can succeed, and it's an underrated skill is to be able to call play. Not underrated. It's something that not everyone can do, is to call an offense and to really be in control. But, he's incredible. And with the preparation, me and him meet every single day. Sunday, the only day we don't meet individually is Saturday, because we're playing. But, Sunday through Friday, we meet every single day. It's constant conversation. And the best part about it, I think, is that, we've developed a level of trust where, he tells me things and I obviously, take what he says and I roll with it. But, he listens to me and he understands, that I've been around and I've played a lot of football. And, there are things that I see, that he doesn't, obviously, being in the game. And I think we have a great balance of, working together, which I think is really good. And I think it's part of the reason that we've had a lot of success is, the trust that we have and the stuff that he can call. We were joking yesterday in the meeting of we've been exceptionally good on third and really long here. And I was like, because I know exactly what you're going to call. I was like, I don't even need to look over at the sideline anymore because I know what's coming. And, I know that he has the confidence in me to execute it. And I have the confidence in him to continue to give me opportunities. So, like I said, it's been great. Coach Bo, he's awesome. It's really been great.
And Pat, you touched on the success that Villanova's had, right? 22 straight home victories for this Villanova team, longest active winning streak in the FCS. We know you haven't been here for multiple years, but just curious your thoughts on why that is, this Villanova team just being so formidable at home, right? 3 straight years of not losing a game at home, and again this season getting a bunch of big wins, right? Think of the William & Mary win, the win last week, the overtime victory against Stony Brook 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is, that this Villanova team just seemingly just can't lose at home, just dominates opponents?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to, what has been built here for a long time. And, we have a lot of older guys that, really take pride in wearing the V. And that kind of comes in and, you don't understand it when you're an outsider. And then, when I got here and it was it gets explained, but more so it gets shown to you with your actions every single day of how guys go about their business. And then, the young guys continue to feed into that and to buy into it. And, I think when we get to play and there's a big V in the middle of the field, it just means a little bit more to us because outside of here, not a lot of people put the respect that the V deserves. And, we take that personal. And our motto this year has been, protect the brand. And that's something that one of our captains came up with, Shane Hartzell. He came up with, early in the season. He just said it one day. He said in the team meeting, he was like, I'm going to say PTB and you guys say protect the brand. And I think we kind of rolled with that from the beginning of saying, there's a lot of people out there, that don't think we're that good. And, they think about the main line and they think about how wealthy it is. And, they think about how, Villanova, it's kind of soft. And, we don't feel that way. And when people say that, we take it as disrespect, So I think when we get to play at home, it's about protecting our brand and protecting that V and showing people, what we're capable of doing.
Well, I'm hyped up. I'm ready for Saturday against Harvard. Here we go. Pat, we've touched on a few times throughout this interview, but, the closeness of this team, closeness of this locker room. I mean, you said protect the brand, tap the rock. Just in general, you see the team a lot around campus, the Bone Marrow Drive coming up in the spring, different sporting events, women's basketball game, men's basketball game. I know you've only been here, as we said, for a few months, but what is this locker room like? I mean, you're obviously a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just a bunch of guys that love being around each other. I think one of the great things about Villanova and the great things about our team is that everybody understands that, we're in college to play a game, and games are supposed to be fun. And I think a lot of people forget that, and obviously you put a ton of effort in, and it is extremely serious. But, I think when we go out to practice and, when we're playing in a game is that, we have fun and we really enjoy what we're doing. And that comes from being around each other and enjoying each other's company. And I think that's kind of what has brought us close together is that, we hang out outside of the locker room. Like, guys are always together, walking around, playing basketball. I talked about it the other day in the spring, we used to play basketball every single day after workouts or after, spring practice of just being in Nevin, just shooting threes, and it got super competitive and guys are going after each other. And, I think that was kind of the beginning of it, of guys just always being around each other, nobody's ever alone. And the cool thing, I think, is that everybody lives together. I've been at other places where guys, they live with their boys from home or they live, with buddies from on different teams. And, it's not like that. Like, we all live together. We all live on campus for the most part. And it's as close of a locker room as I've ever been in. And I think it's really, really cool.
Who is the best basketball player on the team?
Ooh, the best? Well, I'm the best shooter.
Okay, that's clear. We gotta set that straight.
I'm the best shooter. The best overall player, Jamie Tyson's pretty good. Anthony Hawkins is pretty good. Christian Sapp's pretty good. I'll still probably say me, but those guys, I'll give credit where credit's due. Those three guys can play.
I like it. I just want to follow up quickly on one other thing as well. You touched on it earlier, celebrations for the team. I've heard that you and Antonio Johnson are the kind of celebratory guys to kind of come up with different things, meet the players when they score in the end zone a touchdown. So just kind of curious, favorite celebration that you've kind of come up with, just how were celebrations kind of created for this Villanova football team this year?
Yeah, I'll give AJ way more credit than I deserve because he's way more creative with it than I am. I love watching it when the running backs score because they have the handshakes with all 5 offensive linemen. So when they do all that one's pretty good. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier of guys just having fun. Guys that are being kids and having a good time and just enjoying the ride. I think that's something that comes from our coaches is that they let us do that stuff. I've been other places where it's been, that stuff is not really encouraged and not really accepted, and it's all business, and that's okay. If that's the way you want to do it, but that's not how we do it. We like to have a lot of fun, and it's funny. The different celebrations. I can't keep track of them all. I usually just get too excited and jump on the guy who scores. So I'm not the best with the celebrations. The one with the receivers, though, is pretty good. The Hellcat one with the dance, the gritty thing that Kalela and Kopecky do, that's a good one. I participate in that one because I don't have the most rhythm, so I can do that one pretty easily. But yeah, I just think it's guys having fun and guys just enjoying what we're doing and just trying to keep it going as long as possible.
Yeah, and Pat, you've touched on just how great this culture is, right? Guys having fun, right, lifting each other up, and a lot of that comes from the head coach, Coach Mark Ferrante. He ended up getting his 66th win for Villanova on Saturday. He's now second all-time in terms of all-time coaching wins behind the great Andy Talley. And just curious your thoughts on what it's like to play under such a successful Villanova coach and Coach Ferrante.
Yeah, Coach Ferrante is incredible. Kind of like what I said about Coach Bowden and playing here, and Coach Ferrante didn't play here, but he's been here almost his entire career. So, whether you played here or not, if you've been here for almost 40 years, I mean, it means a little more, and you can see that every single day, just the way that he approaches everything, the way that he cares about his players and the way that he interacts with all his players. There's coaches in the country, that they're never really around the team. Their office is closed, or you got to go through the secretary to talk to the head coach, and that's not him. That his door is always open. Guys go in there and mess around all the time with him. I go in there and move the stuff around on his desk, make fun of him all the time. But that's how he is with everybody. He's people say, oh, he's a player's coach. I mean, he is. He's for our players, and I think he does a great job of allowing guys to just be themselves and allowing guys to really exploit their talents. He continuously puts his staff members in positions to let them do what they're really good at, and then those guys put us in positions to make plays on Saturday. And I think Coach Ferrante is special. He's a special coach, a special human being. He's one of my favorite people to be around, and it's been incredible. And I'm just lucky he gave me the opportunity to come be a Wildcat.
Looking ahead to the playoff game against Harvard, just kind of early reactions to getting the 12 seed, playing at home, and kind of what's your message to the fan base of Nova Nation?
Yeah, we're really excited, to get to play a home playoff game. It's something that I've never done in my career in college. So, I've been in the playoffs at other places, but I've never got to play at home. And like I said earlier, playing at home, it means something to us, especially to have that V on the field. I think it means a little bit more. And then also to get to play a school like Harvard. It's a world-renowned school, and they have a really good team, and they've had a really good season, and they've never been in the playoffs before, with this being the first year that the Ivy League can get in. So I think it's going to be a great game on Saturday. They're a really good team. They have a good defense. They have a good offense. Their quarterback's a really good player. So we're really excited to get to play in the playoffs, and we got to win. We got to keep winning in the playoffs, and Coach Ferrante's done a phenomenal job since he took over. The standard is to be in the playoffs. So we had a good regular season, but none of it matters anymore. So it's back to 0-0, and we're just trying to go 1-0 and keep this thing going. Like I said earlier, our guys, we love what we do. We love being around each other. So having the opportunity to continue to do it, is really what we're chasing. And we talked about it on Sunday. Right now we're on borrowed time. There's 24 teams in the country still playing, and we're lucky enough to be one of them. And we have to do everything in our power to make the right decisions to be able to execute on Saturday and to make plays and to move on.
Well, can't wait until Saturday's game. Again, first round of the FCS playoffs, Villanova versus Harvard at Villanova Stadium. Kickoff is at noon. You can listen to our WXVU pregame coverage beginning at 11:30 a.m. Wake up, have some coffee, breakfast with us, and get ready for Villanova versus Harvard. Pat, thank you so much for doing this. Always great to talk with you, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on. Go Cats.
Go Cats.
Go
Well,
Cats.
Thank you so much again. Pat McQuaide, Villanova quarterback. You can catch him and the Cats again on Saturday at noon, taking on Harvard at Villanova Stadium. We'll take a break here on WXVU. When we come back, we'll get to the poll questions, give you a quick preview of the team of Harvard, and we'll come back and wrap things up. Again, you're listening to WXVU, V891, The Roar.